Hello, in this video I will present my dissertation project for the Master's Program in Disability, Design and Innovation at the University College London. My project expands upon the Tactile Inclusive Programming or TIP-TOY toolkit that was developed by my supervisors Giulia Barbareschi and Enrico Costenza. The TIP-TOY is a tactile user interface designed to teach introductory programming concepts to learners of mixed-sighted abilities. I investigated how the toolkit might be downloaded and assembled by sighted adults for use by visually impaired learners at home or in the classroom. Computer programming has become the 21st century addition to school curriculum. The number of countries implementing computer programming in primary and secondary education continues to rise. In 2014, England became the first country in the world to require the teaching of computer programming to students ages 5 to 16 years old. President Obama challenged the nation to provide every American student with the opportunity to learn computer programming in his 2016 final State of the Union address. While there is reasonable consensus for the need to integrate computer programming into primary and secondary education, there is still work to be done, especially from the perspective of disability and accessibility. Standard teaching tools for young students consist of block-based graphical user interfaces that rely on visual access to a screen to manipulate inputs and perceive outputs. Therefore, they are inaccessible to visually impaired and blind learners. Some introductory programming materials accessible to visually impaired learners are available. They tend to fall into two categories: screen reader compatible and tactile user interfaces. Screen reader compatible options should be approached with cautious optimism because the availability of screen readers to visually impaired learners is unclear, as well as how familiar young visually impaired learners are with the use of screen readers. CodeJumper, developed by Microsoft, is an example of a tactile user interface that is accessible to visually impaired learners. Children learn to code by connecting physical instruction beads embedded with electronic hardware together to create audible outputs like music or stories. Although CodeJumper is commercially available, it is costly and designed for classroom use. The TIP-TOY toolkit is different because it is open source, downloadable, and designed for use at home in addition to the classroom. My project investigated the following research question: how might the TIP-TOY toolkit be redesigned for assembly in casual settings by sighted adults for use by visually impaired children? The initial design of the TIP-TOY toolkit included 3D printed blocks and a laser-cut acrylic camera stand. These components of the toolkit needed to be redesigned because it is unlikely that people will have easy access to a 3D printer or laser cutter at home. I engaged in an exploratory iterative design process to determine materials and designs that would be best for at-home or classroom construction of the blocks and camera stand. After creating a block and camera stand design that worked within the constraints of the existing TIP-TOY system, I then wrote instructions so that the process of making the components could be replicated by others. Additionally, I conducted usability tests to confirm that the blocks and camera stand can be made successfully by a sighted adult in a casual setting such as their home. My contributions include the block and camera stand design for use in casual settings, do-it-yourself or DIY instructions for making the blocks and camera stand, and usability testing to validate the effectiveness of the DIY instructions. The usability tests prove that the DIY instructions are effective and that the physical components of the TIP-TOY toolkit, being the blocks and camera stand, can be made successfully by sighted adults in casual settings. 8 participants made the blocks and 4 made the camera stand. They found the process to be simple and systematic. The instructions were described as clear and easy to follow. Participants enjoyed making the blocks and were satisfied with the earned results. Participant 8 stated, "It was enjoyable because you see you're achieving something. You saw just cardboard and then you end up with something that you made." There were 2 designs for the TIP-TOY blocks made to work with A4 and A3 size calibration sheets. It was found that bigger is better. Participants reported that the bigger A3 size blocks were easier to make and use. They preferred making the bigger blocks because it was easier for them to see what they were doing and they didn't have to be as precise or delicate. The bigger blocks were easier to use because there was more white space between tactile elements, making the blocks easier to distinguish. Corrugated cardboard was used to make both the blocks and camera stand. Participants reported it was annoying to work with because it might fold, crinkle, wrinkle, or curl when cut. However, all of the participants acknowledged that it was the best material from the aspects of availability, affordability, and safety. Puffy paint was used to provide tactile feedback on some of the blocks, particularly repeat and end repeat blocks. Participants identified it was both the best and worst material. It was the best because it was the most versatile and could be used to make all of the blocks tactile. Participants felt working with puffy paint was the worst because they needed to be patient and precise when applying it to the blocks. They also noted that puffy paint isn't great because it allows more room for error, can be messy, and needs time to dry. In conclusion, this dissertation project proved that relatively simple processes can be employed to cost-effectively make a tangible programming toolkit that is accessible to visually impaired learners at home from materials that are widely available. Thank you for watching.